Good morning again. I'm Brian LaPasse, Chief of Program Services for OPSC. With me today are Joshua Potter and Tracy Sharp, Operations Managers and Program Services. We're going to be facilitating today's meeting and taking questions and answers after the presenters. There's two topics today, which should give us plenty of room to spend as much time as we need going through the regulations and the details that we'd like to share with you today. First on the agenda is the continuation of regulations for natural disaster assistance. Very important item. Casey is going to be presenting those for us and walking you through the item. We previously discussed this topic in three times this year already, in February, April, and June of this year. And depending on what everybody thinks of what we have to offer today, this is likely going to be our last public meeting before we deliver those regulations to the state allocation board. So this is your chance to have your voice heard. If there's something that you want to drill a little further down on, or you have some considerations you'd like us to look at, today is the opportunity, and also for the next 2 weeks. But today is probably the last time that we're going to be talking about it in this format. It's a very important topic, as I mentioned. It's something that we've taken very seriously. We take all of our topics seriously, but this is one of those we want to make very, very sure that's as perfect as we can make it. These are critical grants that are going to be used in times of serious need. So please lock in, make sure that together we can work and make these rules as great as they can be, and they're going to serve the purposes that they're intended to serve when the time comes. We hope we don't have to use them, but if we do, we want to make sure that we're really ready to use them and that the program is working as it's intended to work. After that, we're going to be discussing another pertinent topic, and that's the future mandatory use of OPSC Online for submittals and document uploads. Vanessa is going to be walking us through that topic today. Basically, we've been migrating to OPSC Online for several years. It's going back 6 or 7 years, I think. A few of us have been spending 3 or more hours every week on OPSC Online for the last 6, 7 years, developing it, meeting with our developers, taking feedback from all of you, from our internal staff that's doing testing all the time. I'm sure they can attest to that. They can attest to the testing. We do tons of testing on that thing. And I'd like to give a lot of credit to our team for spending so much of their time doing that. We're doing our best to make it a tool that makes things easier for all of you and for us too. And it's going to make things more efficient for our processing. But really, it's intended for all of our stakeholders to be able to use our systems, submit applications easily. We've also recently completed a really robust user guide for OPSC Online. You probably have heard me talking about it here or maybe elsewhere, but and we did have one already. It was a pretty good version. It was, at the time it came out, it was really good. But we have done so much programming since then, and so we completed the most recent iteration of that earlier this year, and we sent it out to a group of people. It's the first testing round of what are 3 testing rounds that we have planned. The next round will be coming up around August 15th. Right now, we're working on all the edits we received and comments from the first round of testing. So we're going to have another round of testing in August, and then another one after that in October. And the hope is that it'll be ready for the end of this year, maybe early next year. I sent it out to approximately 50 testers, I believe, in the first round. We got a handful of responses, not as many as maybe I would have hoped. I'm just hoping that maybe everyone looked at it and thought it was really great and didn't have a lot to say. But I plan on sending it out to all the testers I didn't hear back from in the first round, and I'm going to add a lot more names this next time. If that's something that you're interested in doing and helping us with, please send me an email or give me a call, and I'd be happy to add you to that list. The guide is intended to make navigating OPSC Online as seamless as possible, even for someone that's unfamiliar with it or that's new to it. I have to give massive credit to our team here. They've worked really hard on this guide. It's 1,000 pages of information. This is on top of Prop 2 implementation, on top of our normal processing that we do all the time. And we're really proud of what we've produced. And so we're very excited to share it with you. We're hoping that we can get some of you to look at it in advance. We think we've produced a really good guide. But again, it's an integral piece to making OPSC Online mandatory. And it's one of those things that we wanted to make sure we got really right so that when it does come time in the future to transition over to OPSC Online, you have all the resources you need to use it. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'm looking forward to our discussion. And again, please feel free to enter questions into the Q&A box down at the bottom of your menu. Use the raise hand feature when we have pauses or at the end of each presentation, and we'll make sure that we get your input. With that, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to turn it over to Casey. Just one second here.
All right. Thank you, Brian. All right. So good morning, everyone. My name is Casey Barr, and today I'll just be discussing the implementation of Proposition 2's provision for natural disaster assistance. So just for a quick overview of what this presentation is going to comprise of, first we'll take a look at the stakeholder feedback received since the last presentation of this item back on June 12th. And then next, after that, we'll review some new and amended proposed regulations that expand on those previously presented. After that, we'll review a few changes to the proposed Natural Disaster Assistance Form SAB 195 and its companion checklist. After that, we'll introduce 2 new grant agreements for requesting either form of assistance. And following that, there will be a quick overview of proposed amendments to the fund release authorization form. Finally, we'll conclude with the 5-year school facilities master plan requirements as it relates to this assistance. So really the intention of this presentation today is to kind of tie a ribbon on the proposed implementation of this item and to fill in any gaps on everything that we've proposed thus far. So with that, we really encourage you to provide any feedback or thoughts you have. I believe the final day to provide feedback on this item is going to be the close of business on August 8th. So yeah, we really do appreciate all your feedback thus far, just kind of echoing Brian's sentiments. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and give a quick recap of the dates this topic has previously been presented, as well as the provisions of Education Code section 17075.20, which I'll refer to as the new statute for brevity's sake. Okay, so as Brian mentioned earlier, we've previously presented this topic at the February 13th, April 10th, and June 12th meetings this year. Within these presentations, we've discussed the new statute, which provides authority for the State Allocation Board to fund interim housing following a natural disaster for which the governor has declared a state of emergency, in addition to authorizing the board to provide any other assistance. So this provision is applicable to school districts or county offices of education. So our previous meetings discussed concepts of implementation, reviewed previous feedback, and allowed our team to develop the regulations and forms proposed today. So that being said, we can go ahead and move to stamped page number 4 of the item, where we'll take a dive into the stakeholder feedback received since our last presentation and then our responses. So looking at question number 1, the stakeholder requested clarification as to whether the state share percentages are intended to incorporate the new local funding adjustment provisions authorized under Proposition 2. So in response to this, the state share percentages will reflect the local funding adjustment provisions. We really appreciate the stakeholder for bringing this to our attention, and the latest version of regulations being presented does reflect this. So moving to stamp page number 5 for question 2, the stakeholder recommended amending the proposed section titles for regulation sections .84.1 and .84.2 for purposes of clarity. So we agree with this recommendation, and the latest proposed section titles for these regulations have been updated to be interim housing assistance following a natural disaster and assistance for following other assistance following a natural disaster, excuse me. So the title for the overarching regulation of both forms of assistance, .84, has also been amended for purposes of clarity to be natural disaster assistance. So we'll take a look at that later on, just to make sure we go through that. Okay, and on the same page for question number 3, the stakeholder requested that the final regulation language on the Form SAB 195 include examples of what other assistance following a natural disaster may comprise of. So in response, we intentionally have not included examples just to provide evaluate school districts' requests in the context of circumstances on a case-by-case basis. So in the future, we could consider amending the proposed regulations section to include examples or more specific guidance just based off board actions and direction as it relates to these regulations. And then moving to question number 4, stakeholder requested clarification for the proposed regulation .84.2, which reduces the apportionment for other assistance by 50% of any insurance proceeds. So with that, we really appreciate the stakeholder for bringing that to our attention as well. And we note that the latest version of regulations specify that a reduction to an apportionment based on receipt of insurance proceeds or government disaster assistance will be based on the applicable percentage for the state's share of the apportionment and any applicable sliding scale adjustments. Okay. And then moving to stamped page number 6 here, for question 5, the stakeholder requested revising the title of the Form SAB 195 to mitigate confusion between the 2 different application types. So with that, we do agree with the suggestion, and the title for the 195 has been revised to be the Application for Natural Disaster Assistance. Okay. And then for question number 6, stakeholder requested clarification as to whether separate forms must be submitted and that they're requesting both interim housing and other assistance following a natural disaster. So in response, separate forms are required to be submitted when a school district is requesting either form of this assistance. So if a school district is seeking funding for interim housing, in addition to other assistance following a natural disaster, 2 forms must be submitted. We've also included this for clarity purposes as a requirement in the new proposed Form SAB 195. Okay, so I believe with that, that concludes the review of the stakeholder feedback that was received in light of our last presentation. And as a result, we'll go ahead and take a dive into the proposed regulations. And that is actually going to start on stamped page number 17 of the item. So while going through them, just as a note to everyone, I'll make sure to give a bit of room to breathe and check in between discussing these changes, just because I know it's a lot all at once. So let's see. We can go ahead and start with the definition section. So with this section, we've amended the proposed defined term for the Form SAB 195 to reflect that the title of the form be Application for Natural Disaster Assistance. So this coincides with the stakeholder suggestion under question number 5, as previously mentioned. And next, for the interim housing definition, we have restructured it and moved the term purchase to part of the definition that speaks only to the lease or purchase of portable classrooms pursuant to the new statute. Additionally, within this component of the definition, addressing the lease or purchase of portable classrooms, we have also included ancillary facilities, including but not limited to restrooms, admin space, or minimum essential facilities obtained as interim housing pursuant to the new statute specifically. Okay, so moving to stamped page 20 for the next change since the previous meeting, we're going to take a look at section .80. So here, there we go. We have removed the term interim housing from proposed subsection D to conform with the new proposed form title and subsequent regulation sections. So that being said, with those adjustments, I'll go ahead and pause for a moment here and open up the floor for any questions about updates to these sections. Okay, not seeing any here. I'll go ahead and move forward. Okay, so moving to stamped page 22 for the separate apportionment for site acquisition and design costs regulation .81.1, we propose the addition of subsection F. So what the addition of subsection F does is specify that for other assistance following a natural disaster application. If the district qualifies for financial hardship assistance and is requesting a separate design advance, that advance will be for 25% of the state's share of the grant being requested. To request additional funding, once the district has obtained all the necessary plan approvals and contracts, a subsequent amended Form SAB 195 will be submitted. So the additional funding would be offset by the design advance. Okay. And then moving on to page number 23, we'll go ahead and start looking at the Natural Disaster Assistance Program section, so .84. This section has a few updates from the last meeting. So first, we have the title for the section that's been amended to indicate natural disaster assistance, which encompasses both forms of assistance, that being interim housing and other assistance following a natural disaster. And then the next proposed amendment to the section is the inclusion of reference to the new construction and modernization district matching share requirements. So with those little changes, I'll go ahead and pause there again, just to make sure there's no other questions that have come up. Okay. Seeing none, so I'll keep going. All right, so we have, let's see. Let's take a look at the new proposed regulation .84.1 on that same page. This one has been renamed to interim housing assistance following a natural disaster, as mentioned previously for purposes of clarity. So on the same page, this section has been reorganized and really just shortened for clarity and to reduce duplicate requirements in other regulatory sections, as well as the proposed Form SAB 195. And then if we go to the next page, 24, subsection D, which was formerly presented as F, has been amended to clarify the portion of any funding received from insurance proceeds or government disaster assistance that will be reduced from an apportionment provided in accordance with this section. Next, we have subsection E has been added to state that the apportionment will be subject to the availability of funds pursuant to the fund release process or priority funding process. And then we have subsection F here. That's been added to state that a grant agreement pursuant to the section for grant agreement submittal is required as a condition of participation. And then finally, within this section, we have subsection G, which has been added to specify that the district is also subject to the requirements of the program accountability progress audit section of regulations. Okay, so let's see. Next, we'll go ahead and start going down to .84.2. Which has been renamed Other Assistance Following a Natural Disaster. Again, just for clarity on the to delineate the forms of assistance under natural disaster assistance. So the proposed changes since the last presentation, we're kind of comparable to the .84.1 section, we have reorganized and shortened it for clarity and just to reduce duplicate requirements between the regulations and the form. Additionally, the first paragraph here on page 24 has been amended to state that funding provided by this section is subject to the availability of modernization and new construction bond authority, applicable to the respective scope of work in each request. Okay, and then on stamped page number 25, moving down, previously presented subsection C has been separated into subsections D and E. To demonstrate the differing adjustments respective to new construction and modernization eligibility baselines. Okay, and then subsection F right underneath that has been expanded to clarify that the portion of any funding received from insurance proceeds or government disaster assistance will be reduced from an apportionment provided in accordance with this section. Okay, and going down a little bit on that page, we'll take a look at subsection H. This has been added to state that the apportionment will be subject to the availability of funds pursuant to the fund release process and priority funding process sections of regulations. And then subsection I is added to state that a grant agreement is required in conjunction with these applications. And subsection J has been amended to specify that the district is subject to the requirements of the program accountability progress audit sections of regulations as well. So I'll go ahead and pause there just to check and see if there's any questions about the natural disaster assistance regulations as presented.
Just to be clear, Casey is covering the changes that we've made since our last iteration. That's not limiting your questions to just those items. So if there's other things that you'd like to discuss or you have questions about, even if it's something that we're not mentioning today, please feel free to do so.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. So I'll go ahead and move on to the fund release process regulation, .90, just starts on page 25, I believe. So within this, subsections A and D have been amended to include reference to the proposed regulations section .81.1F, which is relevant to the design advances for other assistance following a natural disaster. And then let's see. For the new construction project funding order section, let's see, under .93.1, we're adding reference sections, reference to sections .82.1B and .82.2B, which were unintentionally omitted from the previously proposed regulations when we had amended them originally. So this adds back clear reference to the specific facility hardship and seismic mitigation program sections that are applicable to the new construction project funding order section. Okay, so on page 27, looking at the program reporting requirements regulation .104, we propose the inclusion of subsection A1C, which states notwithstanding subsection A1B, that a project shall be deemed complete 8 years from the date of the final fund release for projects receiving funding pursuant to the sections for interim housing or other assistance following a natural disaster. On the following page, subsection H is proposed. So looking at this proposed section, paragraph 1 indicates that districts must provide certification that upon project completion, or no later than 60 months from the date the lease was signed, for purposes of interim housing, the leased portable classrooms have either been removed or will remain in use within the school district. This is to conform with the requirements of subsection I5 of adjustments to the new construction baseline eligibility regulation, .51, wherein portable classrooms leased beyond 5 years to provide interim housing are subject to an adjustment on the school district's new construction eligibility baseline. So for qualifying projects that receive board approval for an extension of up to 3 years, the districts shall provide an additional certification no later than the approval date of that extension as approved by the board. Paragraph 2 is going to state that the school districts must provide certification upon project completion or no later than 96 months from the date of the apportionment that portables purchased for interim housing have been removed or will remain in use within the school district. So 96 months or 8 years conforms with the proposed subsection T2 timeframe, also within the .51 adjustments to the new construction baseline eligibility regulation, wherein purchased portables that are removed from the school district within 8 years of occupancy permit a reversal adjustment on that baseline. So this allows OPSC to track portable facility usage and process eligibility adjustments in a timely manner. Okay, so going ahead to page 29, we'll go over the final proposed amendment to the regulations since the last meeting under the Program Accountability Expenditure Audit, which is section .106. So within this section, For purposes of insurance proceeds and other disaster assistance offsets for projects receiving funding under either form of natural disaster assistance, if expenditures are not made in accordance with the provisions of the natural disaster assistance regulations, OPSC shall recommend to the board that the apportionment be adjusted based upon audit findings. So additionally, any insurance proceeds or disaster assistance received after the apportionment will result in adjustment to the funding. So on page 30, a paragraph has been added at the end to indicate that it's the district's responsibility to report any insurance proceeds or government disaster assistance received after the completion of the expenditure audit. So with that, that concludes the additional and amended proposed regulations since our last meeting. And I'll hold some space right here for comment just before moving on to the proposed Form SAB 195. Okay, not seeing any, but I'll keep an eye out as I kind of move along. So we'll go ahead and go to stamped page 31 to kind of take a look at the Form SAB 195. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, we've renamed, we have a proposed rename to the title of this form, that being Application for Natural Disaster Assistance. And I'll kind of go over some of the changes that we've made since the last meeting. So within the instructions here, we have language that's been added to clarify that districts wishing to request both interim housing and other assistance following a natural disaster, that they must submit separate forms for each respective request per school site, hearkening back to that stakeholder suggestion. And then on page 33, if we go down, the header has also been amended, including a box for the authorized district representatives information, a box for the project tracking number, and in the high school attendance area. So comparable to the 5004, if you will. And so looking at section 1 on this page, we've made a few amendments to it since the last meeting. So that being, we have check boxes indicating whether the application is a new or amended request. Applications who are not requesting a design advance would select new. And then instructions for hybrid applications that share plans and specifications with one or more other SFP applications have been included. I believe that's under section 7, maybe. Yeah, it might have been out of place. And that's also within the instructions as well. And then, sorry, scrolling back up just one more time to section 1. We also have included an option to request interim housing for ancillary facilities in conjunction with our proposed change to the definition of that term, and an option for districts that meet financial hardship criteria to request a separate design apportionment for requests for other assistance following a natural disaster. So that, I believe, is going to be, if you scroll down a little bit more, that very last checkbox under section 1. Okay. And then above that, you see there, the indicate the type of ancillary facilities identified as destroyed or rendered unsafe to occupy below. So we have entered that section as well as one for destroyed or rendered unsafe classrooms for districts to enter that information as well, just to account for everything. Okay, let's see. And then we'll go ahead and move to page number 38 here, just to kind of conclude the changes to this form since the last meeting. We'll look at the certifications, and the very last bulleted certification has been added to include reporting and offset information specific to insurance proceeds or government disaster assistance. So I'll go ahead and pause briefly again here, just so you can take a look and make sure there's no questions along the way. Okay. Not seeing any, so I'll go ahead and just touch on the proposed checklist really quickly. So I won't go through it in full because there are very minor changes since the last meeting. But the changes that have been made are just minor amendments to conform with the proposed changes for the 195. So with that being said, I would just want to emphasize that this is not a required document for submittal, but it is intended to be a helpful tool in requesting this assistance. So please provide any feedback you have insofar as what might be beneficial to include that may not be included. Yeah, so I won't belabor this checklist because it is fairly similar to the prior meetings. And then let's see, if you keep scrolling down to page 42, we have two new proposed grant agreements. So one is actually going to be respective to interim housing assistance following a natural disaster, and the other is going to be specific to other assistance following a natural disaster. So both of these grant agreements follow a similar formatting to the one used for the SFP projects, although they're considerably shorter. So of note, once these are completed, the district would provide a final expenditure report and annual savings report that are subject to the K-12 audit provisions outlined in Education Code section 41204. So we highly encourage you to review these grant agreements and provide feedback as well. Okay, and then Brian, we're going to go back a little bit in this package to stamped page 14. And just take a look at a proposed amendment to the fund release authorization form SAB 5005. So this section is just going to be a new proposed Part X for natural disaster assistance. And the inclusion of this would just shift the numerical order of the subsequent parts of the form. So the proposed section would have the certification checkboxes on the page here. And then, of course, instructions within the form as well. And I'll give a brief pause here just so you can take a look, check in, see if there's any outstanding comments. Okay. All right, great. Well, I will go ahead and move forward. So last but not least, I'll see, let's go to page 14 if you can, Brian, please. I just wanted to speak to the 5-year school facilities master plan requirement as it relates to this assistance. So just as a reminder, with passage of Proposition 2, districts must provide specified minimum elements as a part of this required 5-year school facilities master plan. Natural disaster assistance applications submitted on or after October 31st, 2024 are subject to this requirement. So we propose aligning this requirement related to the timing of the master plan submittal for these applications with the board approved timing for the facility hardship and seismic mitigation program applications, wherein the submittal of the master plan will be required by the time the school district's substantial progress certification for construction of the project is due, which is 18 months after fund release, or by the time of submittal of the 100% complete expenditure report, whichever occurs first. So districts wishing to request natural disaster assistance must submit a governing board resolution acknowledging the requirement to submit the master plan by these deadlines. The board resolution must also acknowledge that the project may be rescinded for failure to submit a master plan with the required documents, or excuse me, required components. And on stamped page 15, a link to this requirement, which is probably much more eloquent than mine right now, may be found that directs you to our website page for the 5-year facilities master plan. So with that being said, that's just about the end of the materials for my item today. Again, we really welcome feedback on this item. I think, again, you have until close of business Friday, August 8th. And I just really appreciate all the continued collaboration and engagement with this topic. So thank you for your time. I'll go ahead and send it back to Brian to open the floor for any lingering questions or comments.
Thank you, Casey. Yeah, we've put in a lot of time on this item. If you haven't had a chance yet, please look it over carefully. Like Casey mentioned, we'll be accepting feedback for the next couple weeks. We'd love to hear from you if you have anything you'd like to offer, thoughts for us to consider or something you see that just isn't quite sitting right with you, please let us know. Not seeing a whole lot of activity out there. I am going to give it just a minute before we move on.
I think I see one question in the
Yeah, there is
Q&A.
one question. I can go ahead and read it. It's from April Thompson. It says, will there be a separate facility master plan resolution template for this program, or should districts use the facility hardship slash seismic template? Um, I think we do have one.
I think
Um,
it hasn't been, we haven't updated the website with
okay.
anything yet.
Okay. So yes, the answer
That
is
is
yes.
the intention.
Yeah, I knew we had been working on that. So we will have one of those, and we'll get that out as quick as we can. Excellent question. Thank you. Seeing nothing else at the moment, we can always circle back on this one. And so if you think of anything, let us know. Casey, thank you again. And thank you to everyone who's participated in the creation of this item or provided feedback. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a very important topic. So um, we hope that if anyone does have to use it, that it's really going to help them a lot. And that was our goal with this item. So. Okay, seeing no other questions, we're going to move on to mandatory use of OPSC Online. I can't remember exactly what page it starts on, but I'm going to try to find it. There we go. All right, I'll turn it over to Vanessa.
Thank you, Brian. As mentioned, I am Vanessa, and today I will be walking us through proposed regulatory amendments to require all document submittals related to SAB administered programs to be completed using the OPSC Online system. Today's item provides an overview of the rationale for this proposal, presents historical data on OPSC Online usage, and summarizes results of a recent survey that was sent out to stakeholders requesting feedback on the OPSC Online system. If you'd like to follow along, this item does begin on stamp page 59 of the agenda. So thanks for taking us there, Brian. The authority for this item comes from Education Code 17070.35 and Government Code Section 15503, which is also found right here on page 59 of this item. For some background, stakeholders may or may not be aware that OPC Online is a web-based application portal created approximately 7 years ago. Since its initial inception, OPC Online has undergone numerous expansions and improvements, and today it's used to administer multiple programs, including the School Facility Program, the California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten and Full Day Kindergarten Facilities Grant Program, and most recently, as of this month, the Unused Sites Program. And as new programs like the Small School District Program and the Lead Remediation Program are established, they will also be programmed into OPSC Online. Additionally, OPSC is currently testing and intends to release an expanded OPSC Online user guide, as Brian mentioned, which is really comprehensive and includes so many updated programming features, hopefully later this year. And so, given the availability of all programs and data in this online system, OPSC staff has transitioned to exclusive use of OPSC Online for all of our internal operations, and is strongly considering a requirement to make submittals through OPSC Online mandatory for all users and programs beginning July of 2026. And so as OPSC strives to improve online services and standardize submission processes, OPC does believe that the mandated use of OPSC Online will be of a great benefit to streamline processing, eliminate redundancy, reduce errors, and improve accessibility. The OPSC Online user face is also ADA compliant, and therefore better accommodates accessibility needs when compared to email. There are also several other government agencies that have successfully implemented their own online portals, many of which I'm sure you might have used. These agencies include the California Commission on Disability Access, California Department of Human Resources, California Department of Motor Vehicles, and the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. I think for most of us, the DMV is probably the one we're most familiar with. And so over the years, OPC has continued to see an increase in the utilization of OPC Online by external users. The table that we have on stamp page 61, table 1, indicates the number of forms that were submitted to OPSC via email or physical mail from 2019 to 2024. And right below, table 2 displays the data for forms that were submitted directly through OPSC Online during the same time period. The percentages at the bottom of each table reflect the percentage of forms submitted via the indicated method during that given year. So you can take a look and compare the differences year by year for email versus OPSC Online submittals. If we scroll down to the next page on figure 1, we see a visual of the increase in use of OPSC Online from 2019 to 2024, utilizing the data that was displayed in Table 2. And so you see that in 2019, there was a total of 2.74% of all forms submitted using OPSC Online at the very beginning of our run with OPSC Online. However, by 2024, that number had increased to a whopping 22.35% of all forms submitted through OPSC Online. And so while that is a very significant increase, and thank you to our stakeholders and users for utilizing the system, we see that the data reveals that there were still a total of 2,651 forms that were received by email or physical mail, which are then manually keyed in to OPSC Online by OPSC staff. So some redundancy happening there. And so if we move on to our next page, some of you may subscribe to our email blasts for OPSC. Lots of good information goes out there. If you haven't already done so, would definitely recommend. But those of you that are on our email blast would have received an email on February 28th, 2025 about a survey to gather feedback on the proposed requirement to make OPSC Online mandatory. The survey featured many questions regarding like the most used features of OPSC Online, suggestions for future enhancements, and also potential concerns. And so I just want to take a moment to thank everyone that participated in this survey. This was of great use to us, and I'll be walking us through some of the results in this item, of some of the survey results in this item. And so first, just for the most used features on OPSC Online, our top 5 features were that use of the application dashboard, the project tracking number tab, submittals for funding requests, eligibility forms, and the district administration tab. As Brian mentioned earlier, we have our whole team that's really devoted to updating and enhancing OPSC Online all the time. And so we'll ensure that these most used features are prioritized when we are working on updates to OPSC Online, as well as providing additional training and resources for utilization of these tools. And so if we move down to the next part of our survey results, we have many great suggestions from our stakeholders. And so we have grouped these suggestions into kind of common themes. The first theme was the request to expand delegate access so that consultants be allowed to submit documents on behalf of a district. In response, OPC acknowledges that, although not advised, school districts do have the ability to designate district representative permissions to their consultants via a valid school board resolution. The process for authorizing a new district representative is on our website, should a district wish to grant their access to a consultant. Additionally, delegated users may complete entire draft applications and upload any submittal documentation without actually needing to be an authorized representative. So I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. The second suggestion received was the request to develop a more interactive checklist of required documents that need to be uploaded to OPSC so the district can verify if they have submitted all of the required documents as they move through an application. There were also multiple requests to delete uploads. And so in response, OPC will definitely explore options for interactive checklists with our developers to see if this is a feature that we can offer. However, the ability to delete uploaded documents will continue to be limited to internal super users. Stakeholders are reminded that when we're uploading and submitting documents to OPSC Online, it's essentially the equivalent of dropping an item into the mail. Once it's sent into the mail, we can no longer retrieve it, right? But if a district really does need a document deleted, they are always free to reach out to OPSC and contact their project manager for some assistance if there was a mistake. And then our third suggestion, your third suggestion, I'm sorry, was to create a more form-like interface resembling our official PDF form. And so again, OPC will explore this option with our development team to see if we can offer this feature. The fourth suggestion was the ability to customize a district's dashboard to filter out unwanted items. OPC, again, will also explore this option with our development team. However, in the meantime, there is a workaround. Districts can sort by utilizing the keyword search function on their main dashboard. So for example, if you would like to just view all of the grant agreements for your district, you could just type in grant agreement into that search bar and your dashboard would only populate grant agreements. And so that's a good way to sort through the kind of applications that you would like to view. And then lastly, the fifth suggestion was the ability to provide public access to district and site level data without requiring a district login. And so OPC would like to remind stakeholders that there are several features of OPSC Online that are already publicly available, including the project reporting system. Users do not need a password to view project tracking data with this read-only application, and it has search functions for both the school facility program and the lease purchase program. So as part of future enhancements, OPC also plans to include the ability to view SAB approved remaining eligibility and present day dollar values of per pupil grants for access. Okay, and let's move on to concerns. There were several concerns raised about mandating the use of OPSC Online, and most of those were similar in nature and can be grouped into one of the following three categories. System reliability and technical issues, usability and need for training and support, and restrictions for LEA delegated users. I'll go through them one by one. And so first, regarding the system reliability, OPC acknowledges that the online system is not immune to technical difficulties, and we do have a designated development team to monitor and troubleshoot any defects. However, OPSC has found that most issues are relatively short in duration, and staff are available to assist school districts as needed. But in the event that users are unable to access OPSC Online, the proposed regulatory amendments do include a provision that allows users to submit evidence of circumstances beyond the district's control that preclude the submittal, and to be able to submit by the next available business day following that restored access. Additionally, on November 7th, 2024, OPSC did release a major update to our system that has really improved user experience. About 1/3 of the survey respondents reported that they had not utilized this OPSC Online since that upgrade. And so OPSC would highly recommend revisiting the webpage to see if any previous issues or concerns have been resolved with this new upgrade. Regarding the second concern for usability and need for training and support, OPSC would like to reassure districts that prior to the full implementation of proposed mandatory usage for OPSC Online, we're planning to have a series of stakeholder meetings. We want to seek as much feedback and input from you as possible. We'll have additional training and the publication of this very comprehensive OPSC Online user guide to make this transition really as seamless as possible. Additionally, OPSC staff are available to provide one-on-one demonstrations and walk through the functions of OPSC Online. Lastly, regarding the third concern for restrictions on LEA users, as previously mentioned, although not advised by OPSC, districts may designate authorized representative permissions to a delegate via school board resolution. For districts, though, that would like to assign access to consultants, architects, or other LEA delegates without making them authorized representatives, the district may reach out to OPSC staff to establish access. This is a one-time event that allows users full ability to submit documentation and draft applications up to the point of submittal. District authorized representatives only need to log in and submit the final application, like as if they're signing the 5004. So the process isn't very much different from that practice of consultants preparing a Form 5004 and all the supporting documentation, and then sending it off to the district for their final signature. And so therefore, the ability to actually submit the final application will continue to be limited to authorized representatives. And so that is kind of an overall summary of our stakeholder feedback from our survey. And I would just like to say thank you again for all of you who took the time to fill that out and provide all of this input for us. It's incredibly valuable. But before we move on to our proposed regulatory amendments, I would just like to make a note that there are a lot of proposed regulation changes in flux right now. And so the current proposed regulations on this item do not include any pending Proposition 2 amendments, but that they will be incorporated once the approved regulations go into effect. And so just kind of stay tuned and wait to see how everything all comes together. For now, let's continue to the proposed regulations on attachment B1 on stamp page 69. Okay, so just a couple of changes here, a couple of amendments. In our definition section, 1859.2, OPSC is proposing adding a new definition for the term OPSC Online, meaning the online system that allows school districts and applicants to electronically submit requests for funding and associated project documentation for all school facility program projects. There is also proposed amendments to other existing definitions that include the requirement that all applications and forms for active programs be submitted through OPSC Online. So you can kind of see they're all highlighted and underlined for you. Moving down to section 1859.17, this is an entirely new section. that requires the submittal of applications through OPSC Online beginning July 1st, 2026. This section also provides guidance for which application documents and formal correspondence are subject to this requirement, as well as the submittal processes if OPSC Online is inaccessible. As mentioned before, districts can submit evidence demonstrating circumstances which precluded them from submitting and then submit the next available day. Sections 1859.20 and .21 are just amended to specify the OPSC Online submittal requirement, so electronically through OPSC Online. And then section 1859.90.2 is amended to eliminate existing references to requests being physically received, so as to avoid confusion about the requirement to submit through OPSC Online. We don't need physical submittals anymore. And then lastly, on page 74, we have attachment B1B, which just proposes amendments to the instructions on the form SAB 5004 to include direction to submit all applications and supporting documents through OPSC Online. And we scroll down a little bit. We also replace an outdated reference to the project tracking number generator with the new relevant location for OPSC Online. And so with that, I just would like to remind everyone that OPSC's goal is to indeed maximize the usability of OPSC Online and ensure eligibility and funding submittals do have the best resources for application and upload process. Stakeholder insights are invaluable in this process, and we would greatly appreciate any comments and discussion on this topic. I know I moved through everything rather quickly, and so please take your time to read over this item on your own time, or if there, as Brian mentioned, if there is anyone that is interested in participating in an upcoming testing period for OPSC Online User Guide, please do let us know. Thank you very much again for your time, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Vanessa. Yeah, one thing I'll mention too about the testing, we actually have a test database, and we don't make that link public, but we do send it out to the testers. So you're going to be able to go in and it's basically like a sandbox, they call it. You can go in there and do anything you want, and it's not going to result in any sort of permanent submittals or anything we have to delete. And so that's maybe just something to mention that's something you might be concerned about. I think Lindsay has something to add.
Thank you. Yeah. Just wanted to point out that while in this item we have just included amendments to the 5004 and the SFP regulation package, going forward, once we have finalized language, all SAB required forms will have language included that require the submittal through OPSC Online, as well as other sets of regulations such as the unused sites program and the full day kindergarten regulations as well.
Thank you. We do have one question from April. It says, how will OPSC verify applications received? Will letters continue to be sent via email? Yes, we will continue to send you email confirmation of that. The same process that we're using right now if you have any sort of submittal. Emily is asking, could an enrollment projection generated using OPSC Online's calculator be submitted as an uploaded file in lieu of re-entering the data into the 5001 online form as it exists now when submitting new construction eligibility adjustment? That is something that we are working on. Our ultimate goal is to retain that information as well. We'd like to retain old 5001s from years past and then be able to populate newer ones. It's a very complex programming process, but we have been looking at that and discussing it. So I hope that answers your question. Just to make sure I'm answering April's question completely too, When it comes to our 15 and 4-day letters, we will still send those via email. The district can respond via email, but if there's anything that you need to upload, you would want to do that through OPSC Online. Okay. Any other questions today on any of the topics? We'll be archiving this meeting shortly after we're completed today. You'll be able to find it in the normal spots on the OPSC YouTube page, as well as our website. If you don't know, we do have a website that contains all of the stakeholder meeting information. It's relatively new, but if you search stakeholder meetings on the OPSC website, you should be able to find that. It's a really good resource, and it outlines them by topics, and it's pretty useful. Is there anything else anyone wants to add from our side? Not seeing anything. Not seeing any questions. Again, please look over the materials. If you have any comments or anything else, please send those to us. And thank you once again for spending your time with us. I know everybody's very busy. Your time is valuable, and we certainly acknowledge that and appreciate all your assistance. So, we have a couple more questions. Here we go. William asks, have the OPSC IT team done or are planning to do stress testing to the OPSC website to make sure it can handle the increased traffic due to a sudden increase in users accessing and submitting documents and applications through it? Yes, that is something that we've discussed at length with them, and we're assured that it will handle it. So that's something that we're planning for, should not be an issue. Kim asks, can you include a link, please, or email? Kim, do you mean to the we can send a link to the presentation. Also, if you go to our website under meetings, you can locate the materials, but I think we're able to link it here. So give us just a second and we'll do that. Since we just got a couple of questions, I'm going to leave it open just for another minute. Just make sure that we're answering anything that anybody has a question about. Yes, we can do that too, Kim. We're gonna drop a link to the presentation from today and also to our YouTube channel in the Q&A. Give us just a sec for that, please. Okay, should be a link for the YouTube there, and we'll work on the actual item itself. We are planning to be having at least 2, maybe 3 meetings in August. Not sure exactly when yet, but we're working on those, and then we'll probably have another couple, 2 or 3 in September. And just so everybody's aware too, we'll be having meetings like this through the end of the year. There's a lot of information to get through still. We have made a lot of progress on every topic, just about every topic out of Proposition 2, but we're still working on more, and we'll be pushing those out as we can get to them. We're trying to make sure everybody has time to digest everything. There's a lot of information, a lot of really important information coming through. And so we want to make sure that you all have time to look at it and digest it, consider it, and that we have the time to properly address all the nuance and all the details that comes with these items. So we're happy to do so, but it is a lot of information. So we're going to be working on these probably through the end of the year, maybe even a little bit into next year, as much as it takes. And so I just wanted to kind of make everybody aware of that as well. April asks, has OPSC considered allowing architects to be able to sign documentation without creating an account? That is something that we have talked about, April, and I think we'll have some information for you all on that in the near future. That's definitely something that we're looking at. Okay, seeing no other questions. Again, thank you for being here today. We'll be seeing you soon. I hope you all have a great weekend. Fantastic Four coming out. We're going to go check that out. So have some fun this weekend, and we'll be seeing you very soon. Thank you. Take care.